Hi, I'm Tom from JFJ Wood Flooring, and today we're taking a closer look at wood flooring finishes. Now, your choice of finish is one of the most important decisions when selecting a wood floor, and that's because not only does the finish decide the colour and the sheen level, it also determines the durability, stain resistance, and ease of cleaning and maintenance. Looks matter, of course they do, but choosing a floor based only on appearance is something that can lead to disappointment down the line. It's really about finding that right balance between aesthetics and practicality. And a wood floor is a long-term investment. You want something that looks stunning for years to come. So in this video, we're going to take a look at some of the most popular finishing options on the market, discuss their pros and cons, and cover the key factors worth considering. We also include a handy comparison chart, which can work as a great tool for suggesting the best finish for your preferences and requirements. Hopefully, by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of the nature of these finishes, helping you make a choice that fits your tastes, preferences, and lifestyle. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you do find it helpful, please hit the thumbs up and give it a like so others can find it. So let's start by looking at pre-lacquered flooring. A lacquer is essentially a protective coating that sits on top of the timber. Think of it as creating a hard barrier between the wood and day-to-day life. Because the lacquer sits on the surface rather than soaking into the wood, lacquered floors are generally very resistant to stains, spills, and everyday wear. But because lacquer sits on the surface of the wood, traditional lacquers can sometimes feel a little less natural than other finishes. And in our experience, it's not uncommon for some people to be put off by their super smooth feel. That said, nowadays there are different types of lacquers, including matte lacquers and invisible matte lacquers, which tend to have a much more organic look and feel to them. For this video though, I don't want to spend time on which finish looks best, as you can judge this for yourself. Instead, I want to highlight some practical considerations. With a pre-lacquered wood floor, there is no further treatment required on site. And because of this short-term convenience, it can be a good choice for those looking for a pre-finished, durable and water-resistant floor. Factory-applied lacquered floors do also come with their drawbacks though. Lacquered floors can be less forgiving when it comes to damage, as the scratches and scuffs tend to be more noticeable compared to oil finishes. And also, if you ever need to repair a specific area, it's harder to spot repair a lacquered finish. Typically the whole room needs to be refinished. Moving on to UV oiled flooring. Now, when it comes to UV oils, I actually want to start with a common misconception regarding the name. A UV oil finish is simply an oil that's dried under UV light in the factory, which makes it cure quicker and harder. It's not specifically relating to any additional UV protection for the wood. So don't be misguided into choosing a UV oil based on it protecting it from sunlight. Because of their UV cure drying process, UV oils cure hard, much like a lacquer. A simple description of UV oil is that they share many characteristics of a lacquer, but as a rule of thumb, tend to look more matte and natural in their appearance. Now let's talk about oiled finishes, the most common being natural oils and hard wax oils. So an oiled finish works by soaking down into the timber rather than sitting on the surface. This keeps the floor looking more natural and organic, and you tend to be able to sort of feel the wood more. One of the main practical benefits of oil finishes is that they're more repairable. Generally speaking, more oil can be applied at a later date to rejuvenate the flooring, and patch repair is easier. I'll speak a bit more about patch repair later in this video. Where natural oils and hard wax oils differ most is in their durability and water resistance. Natural oils penetrate deep into the timber and leave less body of oil on the surface. They look and feel very authentic, but they are less resistant to spills and standing liquids. It's always difficult to give outright advice on a video like this, as every property is a little different. But I would say if you intend to install your wood flooring in an area which is more susceptible to spills and stains, then I'd argue that buying a natural oiled board and leaving it like it is perhaps not the best choice. Hard wax oils also soak into the wood, but they leave a thin protective layer on the surface thanks to the waxes in the formula. This gives better resistance to water, stains and day-to-day wear and tear, all whilst not losing that natural appearance. Now, in most cases, when purchasing a pre-oiled floor, you do have the option of applying further coats of oil to the floor on site straight after the floor has been installed. So if you do find a board that you like that's pre-oiled, consider whether the oil that's pre-applied is durable enough for your use. If it's not, then consider applying an additional coat or coats of a good quality hard wax oil after installation, and make sure to test the compatibility first. As always, give us a call with any questions. The final type of finish I want to talk about is actually no finish at all, an unfinished or untreated floorboard. Now, buying untreated floors can seem illogical. You know, some people say, why would I buy an untreated floor if I could buy one which comes treated for me? However, untreated floors come with some potential big advantages, which are not necessarily obvious. So the first advantage of untreated is probably the most paradoxical in some ways, and that's that it can make your decision-making process easier, not harder. Now, when I say this to people, they often say, how? You know, now I have to choose a floorboard and a finish, and that's more decisions to make, you know. Well, that's true, but for some people, finding a floorboard that's the right dimensions, thickness, wear layer, texture, grade, quality, price, as well as the right color and treated with a finish that's suitable for the intended environment, it can be really difficult. You may find a board that you love the look of, but it's not as good a quality as you'd like, or it's not within budget. Or you may find a floorboard that's great value in the right spec, but you don't like the colour or it's not durable enough. Ultimately, choosing an untreated board completely separates the floorboard from the finish. You can choose a floor based on the specifications and value for money of the board itself, and choose a finish separately that looks and performs as you want it. Similarly, it's not uncommon for your tradespeople to need to know the thickness of your floor for their subfloor levels, and often this decision can actually come much earlier into your project than expected. Being asked to choose a floor colour before you've even chosen your kitchen or furniture, or even what colour you're going to paint the walls, it can be challenging for some people, myself included. Choosing an untreated board takes that pressure off. You can choose the board based on the specifications of the board, let your tradespeople know the thickness, and choose a colour and finish later. And the last visual consideration I want to touch upon is matching in with other timbers in your property. As untreated boards allow you to customise the finish, it makes it much easier to ensure a good match with other timbers, whether that be internal doors, skirting boards, thresholds, furniture, and especially if matching in with existing wooden floorboards. So we've spoken about some visual considerations on choosing an untreated wood floor, but what about the practical considerations? Well, starting with the obvious disadvantage, and that's simply that the floor will need treating on site. You cannot leave the floor untreated. There are lots of wood finishes out there, some of which are really simple to apply and others more specialist, and it would be impossible for me to cover application methods today. But in all cases, applying a finish on site is an inconvenience. You have to keep everyone and everything off the floor whilst it dries. That said, the advantages can be significant. The first of which is durability and stain resistance. If you're finishing a floor on site, you can be sure to use a finish which will be suitable for the environment the flooring is to be installed in. As an example, on my kitchen floor, I used a finish called Treatex hard wax oil, and at the time of recording this video, the floor's been down for 7.5 years. The floor still looks great, and other than the occasional mop, I've done absolutely nothing to that floor after the initial 2 coats of Treatex. And that leads me on to ongoing maintenance. The finish that's applied to a wooden floor will determine how easy the flooring is to clean and maintain. Most finishes that you'll apply on site, such as Treatex, they have their own specially formulated cleaning products. These not only do a great job at cleaning the floor, but they also feed and nourish the finish at the same time, keeping the floor healthier for longer. But what happens if you do scratch or damage the flooring? Well, earlier in this video, I mentioned patch repair, the option to replenish a small area of the flooring without needing to sand the entire floor. Patch repair can be significantly easier when the finish was applied on site in the first place. And that's because you know exactly what the flooring was finished with, and unlike factory applied finishes, there is no uncertainty as to how to recreate the same finish again. So which flooring is best? Well, as we've discussed, each finish has their own set of pros and cons. There simply isn't a one finish fits all. I'd suggest starting by considering the nature of the rooms the flooring is to be installed in. Are they higher traffic areas or areas that are more susceptible to spills and stains? If so, then opt for a finish that gives you a higher level of protection. And if you want the ability to patch repair in years to come, then consider the advantages of an untreated board. On the other hand, if the flooring is to be installed in a lower traffic area, whereby most of the time you'll be in socks, slippers and bare feet, well then perhaps stain resistance and durability are not so important, and the decision should be more focused on aesthetics. Another question could be, are you developing the property to sell? If so, perhaps the short-term practicalities of a pre-treated floor would outweigh the potential long-term advantages of unfinished. Or have you been struggling to find a floorboard that's the quality, price and colour that suits? Then perhaps the flexibility that an untreated board can offer would work in your favour. Ultimately, which finish would suit you best is based on a combination of site conditions and personal preferences. Now, to help with this, we'll now display a comparison chart on screen so you can compare these finishes at a glance. I'm going to run through this with you, but feel free to pause the video and take a screenshot now if you want to, then press play again when you've done so. So you can see along the top of the chart, we have the finishes we've discussed today, and on the left-hand side, some features. I'd suggest running through these features and marking which ones are the most important to you, then work your way across each finish, highlighting which best suits you. For example, this was the thought process I went through for my kitchen floor. So for my kitchen, for me, durability was very important, as was water and stain resistance. I wasn't matching in with any other timbers that were already there. Ease of maintenance, yep, for me, this is a property I intend to be in for the foreseeable future. Ease of patch repair, I like the idea of being able to repair my floor more easily if I was to damage it in any way. I was looking for a natural look, and I don't really mind on that one, to be honest, whether it requires more coats to be applied on site or not. So now I'm going to run through the finishes and sort of highlight the ones that are in keeping with the characteristics that I've highlighted over here. So durability, high, medium to high, maybe. Oil, low to medium, perhaps not. Unfinished, potentially very high. Water, stain resistance, so high, medium to high. Low, medium, perhaps not, potentially very high. Same with ease of maintenance, low maintenance, higher maintenance. Okay, and I'm just going to work my way through like this. Ease of patch repair, that's harder to patch repair, easier to patch repair, much easier to patch repair. And then a natural look, potential less natural looking. I was looking for a natural look. So more natural looking, and entirely up to you. So that could be more natural looking. So of the ones I've highlighted, we've got lacquered, we've got 3, UV oiled, we've got 4, oiled, we've got 2, and unfinished, 5. So it just highlights some points that you may want to think about. In this case, unfinished has got more pros than, say, for example, oiled. This is, of course, not a perfect science and doesn't replace speaking to an expert. But if you get stuck in choosing, then a simple exercise like this one can go a long way in making sure that the finish you choose both looks and performs exactly as you want it. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions or want to discuss any of the points we've spoken about in the video in more detail, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We're a family business and we'd be happy to help. Thanks for watching.